professionals are nearly 10 times more likely to experience workplace violence compared to workers in other sectors. Globally, more than 50% of doctors report experiencing some form of workplace violence, including physical assaults and verbal abuse. These figures highlight a critical issue that transcends borders. The safety of doctors is a pressing global concern. Today, we delve into a type of violence doctors face, explore effective protective measures, and discuss how we can collectively push for safer working conditions worldwide. I am honored to have Dr. Rohini, a renowned ENT, head and neck surgeon, and advocate for doctor safety, with us today. Dr. Rohini, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Simran, for having me. So I think if we look at violence against doctors, it is exceptionally high in India, and like how several other crimes are also much higher in India. That is the case with the violence against doctors as well. And the reason why doctors are prone to violence is, one is patients are already agitated. And in India, especially, the thing with India is everybody that comes to a hospital is seen the same day, which means you will have a waiting time of a couple of hours. Whereas if you see abroad, if you see in the Western countries, if you need to meet a specialist, you need to take an appointment few weeks or few months to meeting them. And the specialist will see a specialist, even a super specialist in a government setup or a medical college, medical college hospital is seeing at least 100, 200 OPD in a short span of time. That is maybe in a span of 3 to 4 hours itself, they will have to finish seeing OPD. And this becomes stressful for the patient and for the doctor as well. One is, so when OPD is getting delayed, patients end up waiting, instead of, even though it's a government setup, patients walk in as expecting treatment to be done immediately. They don't want to wait, even if it is for a few hours, because they don't have a comparison really to see how it is in the West. So even if they're having to wait for 1 or 2 hours, and if it is not critical also, they tend to get very angry. And then in the ER is the whole different story, because there the patients come in itself very agitated. In the OPD, you tend to face more of verbal abuse and violence, and in the ER ward, post-op and all that, you tend to face a lot of physical violence also. And one is general awareness and education of patients. We cannot educate everybody, but there are certain ways that we can protect ourselves in the meantime. It's going to take a long time for patients to really understand. And in urban areas, people are aware. It is in the smaller towns and rural areas where the violence is also more. So one thing is, this is first what we can do for ourselves, because expecting institutional changes, structural changes within the government, all that's going to take a very long period of time. But in the meantime, bedside manners and learning to talk to patients is very, very important, and it is not focused in medical training, especially in India. People are trained very well. They're getting good hands-on. They can make a very quick diagnosis. A lot of Indian doctors can make a diagnosis by spending 5 minutes with a patient. They don't need any investigations. So the skill level is very good. But they have not been taught to talk to patients in a way where it doesn't get agitated, where the patient doesn't get agitated, right? So when a doctor gives a diagnosis so quickly, also the patient was like, for this only I was waiting for such a long time. They don't realize that it's because of the skill of the doctor. And then they get agitated because all their questions are not being answered. And then in the IP, again, bedside manners, breaking bad news. That is something which is not taught. Breaking bad news is something that doctors need to learn. And one way to protect yourself is be very honest with the complications and the prognosis of the patient. Don't take in a patient for surgery and, where you already know that certain risks are there in the surgery. So that can happen. No matter how good a surgeon is, it can happen. For example, you do a FES surgery. One of the complications is blindness if you're in the skull base. So, and inform the patient. What a lot of doctors do is they don't want to scare the patients before surgery, so they don't inform. Now, when complications happen, you're stuck. And at least in private, doctors are careful, so they get consent for everything. But this does not happen in medical college hospitals or government hospitals. So patients do retaliate very violently. And so tell them, even if the smallest risk that is possible, explain to the patient, get consent. Even if you have to get a death on table consent, get that. Even in the ER itself, if you see that the patient is critical, tell them straight away that the prognosis is bad, but we are going to do our best. When you start with that angle, when you start with talking to the patient and tell them, listen, the prognosis is bad. You know that in an ER, the prognosis of everyone is not going to be good. It is going to be bad. But, very politely tell them that, introduce yourself first. Tell them your name. Let them be comfortable with you. In government hospitals, the patients don't even know the doctor's names. So as a doctor, you introduce yourself and tell them, I'm so-and-so. Introduce your team, introduce your staff nurse. Tell them that, even your interns and everybody are well-qualified people and they're all there to help. And tell them that the prognosis is bad and we are going to do our very best to help you. Once you say that, the agitation comes down. And they already know, okay, the prognosis is bad. There is not much we can do, but we will do our best. The patient is going to calm down. And meanwhile, yes, we need to demand for better security, not just for doctors, even for patients. Like recently, there was a case where a patient, like somebody that was known to a patient to take revenge, came into the hospital and shot the patient over there. That was also in the news.
Yeah.
Like after the Kolkata doctor's case came out, this had also happened. So things like this can happen even to a patient. Like that means, somebody in a rural area that is wanting to take revenge on someone thinks that a hospital is a safe place to come and murder their enemy. So that shows that even the public knows that there is no security in a hospital. And, the Kolkata doctor's case is very unfortunate. It is not just about, doctors in the workplace, but that is about all women in the workplace. Like, women have a very high risk of facing crime in their workplace. And this doctor, it so happened. And, if people internally itself are involved, like the principal but their medical license has not been cancelled. So now you're telling the public itself that, you can go do whatever you want and you will not face punishment. So, and after that doctor's case, when they went on strike, Kolkata doctor case, there was, the doctors went on strike, people were also protesting. And then they had over 300 goons enter the hospital and vandalize the hospital. Now just imagine the safety of the patients that were stuck inside. Okay, outpatients were not there. Maybe the patients that were not critical might have also been sent home. But what about the ICU patients? There must have been some post-op patients. So it is dangerous even for the patients to be in an environment. So in a hospital environment these days. So the reason why we can't expect the public to really stand up for us as doctors, but public also needs to demand for better security, because such things can happen. If such things happen in a hospital, if crimes happen in a hospital, even patients will get affected by this. If you have some random person coming in with a gun and shooting his enemy in the hospital, somebody else can get hurt in that process.
Yes.
And the other thing is, in Kerala, there was a doctor that was murdered by a patient that had some psychiatric issues. The big mistake, this happened a couple of years ago, the big mistake that the hospital also had made is allow, the patient has history of psychiatric disease, might have not known what it is, okay, or at least the patient might have been agitated, violent, he was intoxicated. Why send one doctor alone
Yes,
into a room with him.
definitely.
You're sending your intern. Firstly, a male, when it's a male patient, a female doctor is not supposed to be inside alone. And when it is a male doctor, a female patient is not supposed to be inside alone. You have to have another person of the patient's gender inside, or at least have a neutral person. So the mistake made by the hospital was, this is a gross mistake made by by her seniors and the management. Is why send the girl when you know that these norms are there, these parameters, we have all of these rules to follow, these guidelines, not rules but guidelines to follow. Why send the person alone? When you know a person is agitated, just send 2-3 people and first sedate them. Or a person is agitated and on and intoxicated or drugs and all that in the ER, tie them to the bed if you feel that they're going to attack you or attack anybody. So that is something that even the hospital seniors, like the management, they probably have seen more cases, so they should be the one that are stepping in and saying what kind of patients the interns should handle, what kind of patients the senior doctor should handle. And don't send interns to break news, because they don't know how to break news. Like in many of the hospitals, they're sending the interns to break news. During COVID, that was what is happening. Sending the interns to break news. How will they break news when they don't even know what is going on? They've this is their first proper clinical exposure. They probably don't even know what happened, and you're telling them that you're telling them to break news. Instead, somebody a little bit more senior and have people along with you should sit the patient down. And when you're breaking bad news, have only 1 or 2 family members in the room with you. Have them in a room, maybe have a camera, and have 2 or 3 other people with you. So either you can have 2 or 3 other doctors, or to have some staff nurse, technicians inside with you, so that if the patient gets agitated, you have people to help you out. And this is how you should break bad news. Not in the ward, not in the OPD, not in the ER. Take them aside, tell 2 people to come inside your room, and then explain to them what happened. This will significantly reduce the violence rate. Yes, the big mobs attacking and in the ER attacking, it's a little bit more difficult to handle. That the hospital, the government actually at this point needs to do something about it. They have to have proper security, because the hospitals, especially government hospitals, are public places. Anyone can walk in and out. So you're having the airport is a public place, but you're having security there. So the hospital is also a public place, especially a government hospital is a public place, and it requires proper security. And policemen should be there. And you also have to have female police officers in the hospitals, especially at night. It's not just male, but you have to have female police officers especially in the night. And if you have these old security guards who are unarmed, it is not going to give any protection to the hospital. Even like railway stations and bus stations, they're all public places, and crimes happen there. And the reason why crimes happen in hospitals is also because it's kind of a public place, but with no restrictions. And this is why, and the problem is also, people who have attacked doctors have not been harshly punished. And because of this, they know that nothing will happen.
Multiple things actually,
multiple things. And the first thing that we need to do to protect ourselves is bedside manners, learn to talk to patients, properly counsel them before. And okay, you're in the ER, you're busy handling the patient, send somebody else in your unit to speak to the patient. Somebody who's not an intern but little higher up, maybe a SR or maybe a senior resident or an assistant professor. Send them to speak to the patient while you're handling the patient, send them to speak to the attenders. So sit them down, explain to them that this is what is going on, and everybody is trying their best, and explain to them what the condition is. And if you tell them the proper diagnosis and give them the name, most patients are quite smart, even in government rural areas, to put it into Google and find out, and they themselves know the prognosis of the disease. So if you do that, they will not attack. Then, I mean, I won't say not attack, but at least it comes down. And then the other thing with this is, from the beginning, this bedside manners need to be taught, which is taught in Western universities, but in India it is definitely lacking. And also, one problem in India that people have is a language barrier.
Most important.
Yeah, because we don't have one language that unites everybody. And also the medical community is small. So you have doctors from the north working in the south, you have doctors from the south working in the north, though they can speak the languages. Though, when the doctors move, they tend to learn and adapt to the new language, but the fluency is not there, especially when it comes to communicating this. So whenever you're having a deeper level of conversation, you're having a deeper conversation, when you're talking about breaking bad news and all that, it is very difficult to do it when you're not speaking in the mother tongue that you're most comfortable with. So you might sound very aloof when you're saying it, like because you are literally translating maybe from English to that language, or from your mother tongue to that language. And when you do that, your empathy sometimes goes off and you might not use the right words. So if you are not comfortable in that language, do not talk much. Have 2 or 3 other people with you that can fill in the gaps for you when you're speaking. Maybe they might only be the nurse and they might not know very well about the patient and the case, but at least, if you can speak here and there, they can fill in the gaps for you, so that the patient also feels more comfortable. Because even with English, if it is not somebody's mother tongue and their English is not very good, when they're trying to convey something in English, it might sound rude to you because of the words that they have used. It might sound rude. And this is also why a lot of cases like this happen, where the doctor didn't really mean what they said, but it sounded like this in a different language.
Definitely. So this is actually highlighting that all the issues that one practitioner might be facing in his or her journey when he starts, or maybe when he is actually into this. Maybe over the period of time, everything is changing. So the patients who are coming in are also having some kind of behavioral changes, or I must say that they might not actually have that kind of adaptation to, they might not know that what exactly can come up when they're going to an hospital. So there are multiple things that a doctor even might learn, but at the same time, there are certain changes that the patient even needs to learn.
Patients also, need to understand that education will take some time, and the only way, and that also sort of falls on us, because doctors are the ones that need to come up and start speaking about all of this so that the public hears it. And also the other thing is the public has this thing that, if you're a doctor, you should be working 7 days a week, you should be working doing 36-hour shifts, you should be doing 48-hour shifts also. That is not correct, because the thing is, patients also need to realize that you don't want somebody who is sleep deprived to operate on you. Yes. Because like pilots, they have a flying period. No, they cannot cross those hours, because everybody on the flight, their safety is jeopardized if your pilot is tired. And the same thing applies to medicine as well. So when I hear the general public say that, no, you're a doctor, you should be working without complaining, you should work 7 days a week, even if you're underpaid, it is okay, you should be working in the night, you should not sleep. But my question is, as a patient, do you want somebody who's sleep deprived to operate on you?
Yes.
So you have to have strict guidelines as to how many hours a doctor is working, because that really exhausts people. So doctors also get agitated. I will not say that doctors we of course get agitated. I mean, if you have been working 36 hours continuously and you've not had a single day off in 2 or 3 weeks, and the same question patients are asking you again and again, you might snap.
Yes.
You might be rude, you might not explain. So all that happens, and it is not the doctor's fault also. This will happen to anybody who is so exhausted to a break and they've been pushed to a breaking point.
Yes.
And so one is having proper guidelines for the working conditions of doctors is important. This is something the colleges need to implement, and the council also, because even if the medical council implements it, the colleges need to execute it. They can't, because a lot of them are very happy hiring less people and making them work more.
So this is a trend actually in healthcare, and it has been coming up since ages now, because they are being taught that way when we are in medical schools. So we are being taught that way to work extensively for extensive hours, and we are told that the more you work, the more better you will be. But it has been never taught that burnout even affects doctors. They are
exactly. Burnout is a real problem in medicine, and a lot of doctors get agitated with patients because, I mean, you've been seeing from morning 7 a.m. you're seeing 200 patients.
Yes.
The 201 patient, the first patient is going to probably get yelled at by the doctor. It happens, so it happens to the best of us. It happens to the nicest people also. And you have to have better working conditions for doctors to work better also. Even, so when pilots, cabin crew and all that, they're trained to handle conflict, right? When people get into fights, they're trained to calm the situation down and speak and all that. But that also needs to be taught to doctors. But, the thing is, pilots, cabin crew, they're very well rested. So they can apply their mind. When something is happening, they can apply their mind and they can solve issues. They can come up with solutions. But with doctors, what happens is they're already so exhausted. And their brain does not function when something is happening. And even to protect yourself, okay, something is happening and somebody's trying to attack you, your next automatic reaction also becomes slow. The one thing you have to do is you have to carry pepper spray. That is the safest thing you can carry, and learn to use it beforehand. Don't keep trying to figure out when something is happening. So one of your instincts should be that if something is happening, use a pepper spray, because you can't use anything more dangerous, and at least you will have enough time to get up there. Yeah.
But again, there are certain policies that need to change, or maybe there are certain interventions that need to be looked upon by the medical council, definitely, and by the other councils as well, because it is not only affecting the women who are working at place, as you mentioned earlier as well, that it's not only the healthcare professionals or the women who are getting affected only who are doctors. It's a worldwide issue that is actually coming up, that woman is not safe anywhere. So that is an issue. And since you mentioned that the practicality of this dealing with the situation has never been taught, as you mentioned that pepper spray, we just keep it, we don't use it any day, we are like, whenever it will happen, we'll use it then. So this needs to be actually incorporated into some sort of a program wherein females, not only females, actually males are also getting affected with this now.
Exactly. Male doctors face just the same amount of actually, when it comes to violence against doctors, it is a lot of the men who end up facing it because in a lot of cases, they tell when it comes to breaking bad news and all that, they tell the girls not to go.
Yes.
Many of your senior, like your male colleagues, and in medicine, yes, you will be fortunate to have a lot of very good male colleagues also, and a lot of your male colleagues will tell you that no, you don't come, we'll go talk to the patient. So a lot of when it comes to that situation, a lot of female doctors don't get attacked. Actually, it's the male doctors who get attacked more. Female patients, what happens is when they are in the group, I think 2-3 days back, there was I think there was an incident in the ER. The male doctors got attacked, and the female doctor intern also got, I think the patient's attender grabbed her hair. So that happened. That is like an ER situation where everybody was agitated. They came with some amount of vengeance, and they wanted to attack.
Yes. So
But yeah, but if you are whenever in a case where they're expecting the patient, like things like this where it's unexpected and sudden in the ER and all that, yes, then girls also get attacked over there. And like that case I told you in Kerala, where so she was sent. They didn't expect that something like this would happen, but it was unfortunate that they sent her in with the patient, and he stabbed her. So that was not expected. In healthcare, the sexual harassment is higher than other professions also, because one reason is we don't have a proper HR.
Yes.
So we don't have a neutral person to go complain to. So if we are going to complain about one doctor, that is like the workplace harassment. This is a workplace harassment thing. Patients sexually harassing doctors, it's not, it happens, it has happened. But what happens more often is the workplace sexual harassment, which happens in other professions also, like in IT and everything, it happens. But in medicine, the problem is that people think they cannot complain for various reasons. One is if you are so this because of this, a lot of people don't complain, and they don't have a common like neutral body like a HR to go complain. And even if a hospital has HR, I have spoken to people who work in HR. They have worked in HR in hospitals. They have worked in HR in other industries as well, and they always told me that their role as a HR in healthcare has been absolutely useless, because they have no power, they have no say, they have nothing. And people would complain. If somebody did complain, they would complain, and then it would just get hushed up because the management would just shut it down. So this is why there is a lot of workplace harassment in medicine globally.
Yes.
Because you cannot complain. Whereas in other industries, you can complain and it will not affect you. Here, if you complain, there is a chance that you will get affected. But, I feel that at least when people finish, they should come out and tell who these people are. If they have failed, I can understand that, during internship, you're scared. I can understand that during your post-graduation, you're scared. You're scared that you will not be able to graduate. But once you come out and you have your license to practice, nobody can touch you after that. So that is when I feel that a lot of the female doctors that have faced all of these things need to come out with the names of people. And I'm pretty sure you can also anonymously submit it to. There are a lot of places you can send it to journalists. You can send it to NGOs. There are NGOs that will do it. You can send names anonymously also. At least after you finish, people should come out and complain, because the cycle will just keep repeating. And the fact that you're also showing that there are no consequences to these things, people will continue doing. They will not stop, because they know that there are no consequences. They know they're not going to get punished.
Actually, you are actually highlighting the most important things, that nobody is complaining, and this is the reason why no such consequences are coming in the picture. Because again, it is like, if someone is going to complain and someone is going to be that brave enough to do that, then only we can see some changes coming in. But usually, as you mentioned, because you have to learn things, and you have to groom yourself, as well as you have many other things, like your family would not support you in this if in case you are trying to complain.
Exactly.
There are many things.
Exactly. But at least once you finish, I can guarantee you that once you have your medical license, you can complain. Nothing will happen. Nobody can touch you once you have a license. So I know that, when it comes, you can't even verbally abuse your juniors, your colleagues. In medicine, that's completely acceptable. Your senior doctors can verbally abuse you. They can do whatever they want, and they end up getting away with it, because even if you complain, it is only going to affect you. It is not going to affect them. That is why a lot of people don't complain. But when you finish, I think people should come out and complain. There is a lot of toxicity, and the toxicity has been like nothing has been done about it, because one is it enables the people that want to continue this behavior and want to continue this kind of work environment, because it benefits certain people, it benefits the people in power. That's why when people finish, they should complain.
That's actually, you are empowering people whosoever would be listening to this will get some sort of relaxation, because obviously, when they think that right now we cannot do anything, but yes, obviously, once they are done and they have their licenses in their hand, they can definitely go and complain about the things that.
And they should. They can do it anonymously. They can, I mean, they can always reach out to other people, right? There are so many people, people who are doctors itself, who will help them out. So why not?
Yes.
You should not be having such people in the community as well, because as doctors, we complain so much about how non-medicos are not helping us, non-medicos are not standing up for us, non-medicos are not doing this, that. How will non-medicos help us, because our problems are our problems only. We are not fighting for their causes. So if we have any issues and we have some causes to fight for, that is something we need to do. And also when it comes to going on strikes, even over there, people are not united. So many people have been going. When we had the strike recently, a lot of people continued going to work.
Yes.
A lot of people in private practice didn't want to take off. So when there is no unity amongst the community itself, how do we expect things to change? Because now, once I finish, now I hardly have any of these issues that I had as a postgraduate. So many people forget that, I'm now in few years into private practice, and you don't have any of these issues that you have working in a hospital. So a lot of people tend to forget, and that is something that we should not do as doctors itself, because it's the ones who have finished in practice for 5-6 years that can actually help the people who are training.
So this can only be incorporated when someone starts his or her medical journey, because they actually struggle during those 5 years or maybe 6 years of their practice, 5.5 years, because MBBS takes that long.
5.5 years plus again preparation for post-graduation.
And everything.
10 to 15 years minimum in your education itself.
So when a doctor spends so much of time and everything into that, we are spending that much of time. But this is not actually, coming in the forefront. Whenever the patients see this, they are always arguing on things that are actually, not well worthy, fighting on. But I mean, the thing is, they don't know the backstory. And most importantly, when we see doctors actually, talking to their fellow mates or, their juniors or maybe their students, because they are mentors there. So when they are talking to them, they need to learn this, that yes, we need to, respect every student. We should not do a gender bias here. May it be a female or a male, but again, everyone deserves respect, and at the same time, we need to stand up for each other. If we are not going to do that, then definitely the other people or the community, the non-medicals, will definitely not. Because
and even doctors themselves, few years after they finish, they've forgotten all of the problems that they had during residency, and so they don't care anymore. But that's really not the way that things will change. People need to start, it's the people that have finished that actually need to start speaking out more.
Yes. So that's actually a great point highlighted by you, doctor, that everyone needs to speak up for what exactly they have witnessed or they might have faced in their past, and so that the other people who are coming up,
because it has to be worth it, like the medical profession, to join medical profession has to be worth it. So imagine, you're sacrificing years, like even during your school days, you're spending years studying, then you join med school, then you join post-graduation, all of this just to be treated this way, by being abused by people in the community, by your seniors, and then you are coming out and then you face abuse from patients. Is it even worth it for the salaries? And also, there are not enough jobs for people. Like, yes, they say that India has a shortage of doctors, but wherever the doctors work, there are not enough hospitals to employ all the doctors that are graduating.
So, what all policies you think that the government should bring in order to, change this setup a bit so that, doctors can actually feel safe at workplaces? Because the incidents that have happened in the past are horrific. That should not happen to anyone, may it be a doctor or may not be, but it should not happen to anyone. So,
Exactly.
it is like what all policies need to be adapted, as you have mentioned a lot of things that the government needs to take action on, and even the medical professionals need to take action on, the patients need to take action on. But there are certain stringent policies that need to be come into action so that doctors do not have to worry about anything, because when they are practicing they need to be stress free, that yes, I am working at a place that is absolutely safe. So they will feel that safety, and then only even the patient outcomes are going to improve then, because they are not afraid of anything at that moment. So what do you
Exactly.
think about this?
So I think the first is have certain guidelines when it comes to the medical education itself. That is when the student will actually start making an effort. Like when it comes to the USMLE and other exams, speaking to the patient, learning how to speak to the patient and giving them a diagnosis, all that is an integral part of the testing process. So in the training, because these are the easy things to implement. In training, make sure that from second year itself, when they're going for clinical postings, you are there observing how they are, you're making sure that the faculty is there observing how the student is taking history, how the student is talking to the patient, and then teach them. So make sure that in the medical education curriculum that this is incorporated, and also that the faculty are also trained in this, and the faculty are also implementing this. So that is the individual hospitals, colleges need to take care of, and make it a part of the testing as well. When it comes to the clinical exam, make this portion a part of the testing, like, because they're only being tested on the knowledge and the skills, but this should also be assessed. So then the students also will make an effort to learn. They will also make an effort to work on their bedside manners.
So, do you really think that training programs can improve, this globally for doctors for handling potentially?
Yes, definitely, because it is happening outside. India needs to do it. Indian medical colleges need to do it. So it can easily be implemented. Like these college level things can be easily implemented, because it is a part of the medical education, right? So it should be, these are easy things to implement. And then they need to have security, proper security, not these elderly people who really cannot even defend themselves. Have proper armed security, and female police officers are a must at night. You have to, because that is necessary. And also medical licenses should be cancelled of doctors who are being called out for any kind of crime, whether it is, I mean, you lose patient out, that is all, that's all part and parcel of medicine. But if there are complaints against you about sexual harassment, any kind of workplace harassment, abusing your juniors, these kind of things, your medical license should be suspended. Because if that happens, even the senior doctors will start treating the junior doctors properly. At least the doctors will start feeling a little bit more safe when they know that they're not going to be that the action will be taken against harassment and stuff like that. And the complaining part, I get that the girls might not complain, but they should complain once they finish. Yes. Then when it comes to violence against doctors, there should be harsh punishment to people who are attacking doctors or doing even vandalizing hospitals. Because when you vandalize a hospital, like people were breaking oxygen, like they were like breaking things in the ICU and all that during COVID. You are damaging property. These are all expensive. These are all expensive equipment. Patients should be, attenders, all of that. Harsh punishment should be there. Then, at least people will have some fear for the law.
Yes.
And this is something that the government should do, and also have proper working conditions. Because when doctors are overworked, sleep deprived, hungry, they are also going to snap. They are not going to know how to resolve conflict in a calm, composed way. And they are not going to learn, they're not going to be able to apply their mind to protect themselves also, or the patient. So this will improve patient outcomes as well. If you have strict guidelines on the working hours, and also they have to make sure that the doctors that is being implemented. And one thing that they can do is they can actually have some way of people submitting anonymous surveys as well about, or anonymous reports about the hospitals and the colleges that they're working, where they can be given a simple questionnaire, are all these things being taught, or are all these guidelines being practiced in your hospital? Are you having proper security? Like, okay, we have told implement proper security, but is it there? Like all the changes in the training, is it being implemented at ground level? So like this, I think they should have some at least surveys by the students, for the students, interns, postgraduates to answer, so that also whatever the government is implementing, it is being executed at ground level.
Proper audits should be done.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's no point in the government saying that they should have it should be only 50 hours of work per week, but then here they're making you work 100 hours.
Yes.
So there should be some way for them to anonymously report all of these things, so that all whatever the government is implementing is being implemented in the hospitals as well. I mean, you can reach out to a bunch of them. At least one of them will say, yeah, sure, you can come and sit with me and I'll teach you.
Yes, why not? And it should be actually, as you mentioned, that proper training session should be there for every doctor who is actually, coming into this field and is going to be the future of medicine. So definitely they should come and they should definitely learn this, because today the world is changing, everyone is changing, everyone needs empathy. The most important word that everyone lacks here is empathy.
Empathy, yeah. And also I understand that the patients, attenders also don't have any empathy towards doctors. But, that is going to take longer time. But right now, how can you protect yourself? The way you can protect yourself is by learning your skills, learning your bedside manners, and learning excellent communication skills. And yes, the government can implement it into your curriculum, but that is also going to take time. But you need to, as a doctor, realize that you need these skills to reduce your risk of getting attacked by patient attenders and medical legal as well.
Definitely.
Because there are doctors who may do blunders.
Raised by you today that communication is the skill, or I should say is the key to having a safer environment for doctors themselves. So it is really important for every doctor to know all of these points so that they are safe. The government might take some action, everyone might take some action after some time. But the thing here is the one who is facing it at the moment needs to know everything and should be safe and secure and should have his own.
And you can't, right now, you cannot wait for somebody to come and teach you all of this. It is not going to happen. You are probably already in medical college, or it's going to take another 5 years for them to implement.
Yes. So
because it's 5.5 years means only the next batch, after 5.5 years, whoever joins will get benefited. So this is so right now the only way that you can learn all of this presently is by finding mentors to teach, and it's also going to help in your practice. Like, knowing all of this will make a tremendous difference in your practice as well.
That's really, an insight, or I should say it is valuable insights that you have shared with us today. The safety of healthcare professionals is a significant issue that affects us all. By understanding the risks and implementing effective measures, we can work together and we can create a safer environment for doctors worldwide. Yeah. And it is to our audiences as well who are actually listening to this from the various parts of the globe at the moment. Your safety is your own priority, and we need to learn this from the inferences and insights shared by Dr. Rohini, that let's advocate for the changes needed to ensure secure and supported workplaces for all healthcare professionals. Thank you so
It's
much.
not just doctors, this applies for nurses as well.
Definitely, all globally, when we say it should not be only restricted to doctors, but all the healthcare support people who come in, all the paramedics, whosoever is working in this sector is actually at a threat and needs to learn all of these things so that they can help themselves when they are under such threats. So thank you, Dr. Rohini, again for sharing so valuable insights with us. And thank you for tuning in to this most important episode of MedSynapse today. Stay safe and let's continue to support each other in our mission to heal. Thank you.